Welcome to Design Minded, coming to you from 99.1 WQRT LP FM Indianapolis, a program that explores how design impacts our physical environment and quality of life, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. I'm your host, Lee Alig, architect and developer with collaborator Steve Mannheimer, an artist and professor emeritus of informatics at Indiana University, Indianapolis. It's been over 5 years since we've spoken on air with Jim Walker and Shauta Marsh, the co-founders of Big Car Collaborative. And for those that may not know, this radio station is owned by Big Car and is one part of the emerging arts and artists community that has been growing at this location for over 10 years and is now being rebranded as CAMi, C-A-M-I, the Contemporary Art Museum of Indianapolis. Welcome back, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being here.
The newest building to be added to the CAMi campus was originally a dairy barn with several later additions totaling about 40,000 square feet. This will serve as the mothership for a number of programmed uses, including exhibition, performance, sound, creative enterprise, and culinary. But tell us about Big Car and how you got here.
Big Car started because we wanted to live here and have things happening in the community that we wanted to go to. So, when Big Car started in 2004, it was a group of us, a group of artists who were chipping in $15, $20 a month. And we had music and we had art shows and we had poetry readings and we had young children at that time. And so I didn't want to move away from having the help of my mother and his mother. And that's part of the reason we were like, well, why don't we just make it happen? And with this group of artists, and Jim was teaching, he was interacting with a lot of creatives anyway. And most of us became part of the group because of Jim and him teaching.
Yeah, there was that. And also I worked at Nuvo. So between those two things, I met a lot of people. Nuvo was our news weekly that covered the arts, and I was the photo editor. So, we got here through a long path. The new building is really kind of a home for things that we couldn't offer here in this campus here on the south side of Indianapolis. We're in the boundaries of both the Bean Creek and Garfield Park neighborhoods here, and we're just outside of what would be considered the downtown boundary, probably. Which is Fountain Squares kind of gets included in downtown nowadays, and we're so the next neighborhood south of that.
One unique thing about the organization is for us to go from an artist-run space to trying to institutionalize, so we're in the process of becoming an institution like Newfields or the IMA. So that rarely happens with artist-run organizations. This has all happened organically, where we would be responding to the community in a way to what we were interested. And then also, eventually we're joining neighborhood boards and finding out what the community wanted as well, not just us.
And we want to be really clear that we're not comparing ourselves to any of these big, huge institutions. But by that, we just mean that we're not a pop-up or a temporary thing. You've got what's closing in on $13 million of investment in this block down here between all the buildings and houses and everything. So it's not a thing where it's like, oh, well, we're done now. We're going to move on, get a different kind of job or something and leave this behind. This is going to be here well beyond us and is a lot more than just us.
You were last in the Lafayette Square area before this opportunity. A lot of people know it as the Tube Factory, but it was really your first permanent home, was it not? And so this has all been built from that.
Yeah, I mean, this space over here,
years.
For sure. So 10 years ago, we got down here and found this building because we had to move out of the space that they were letting us use at the mall. Really, this place here is a lot like the Tube Factory, is very similar.
When you say the mall, you mean Lafayette Square Mall?
Lafayette Square Mall, right. So when you went in that building out there, it had a whole front room that was glass, like we have over here, windows, because that was where you could buy your tires and rims and go to the counter to pay your bill and wait in the little lobby. And they even had track lighting that shined light on the tires and rims that we just use. And then the back area was all work area. And so we have that kind of in our shop in the lower level of the tube factory.
Plus, you had some outdoor space.
An outdoor space that we converted into gardens and things. So we just did a trial run, basically, on how to do something, convert something.
Well, the interesting thing is none of this is premeditated. You're more reactionary. I mean, like you lost the opportunity to stay there. You might have stayed there.
Yeah. I mean, we also had some plans to move into the Wheeler and worked on that. We had plans to move into the Murphy, into parts of the Murphy.
Talking about the Murphy building.
The Murphy building in Fountain Square and the Wheeler in Fountain Square. And both of those places have changed a lot since then. We had conversations with Tom Batista about moving in next to Milktooth on that building over there on Virginia. So in retrospect, I think we landed in the right place because this neighborhood is in Garfield Park. Being in Bean Creek and Garfield Park puts us in a good place where there's a lot of need still to be part of something, and we can contribute to that. And also access to the Red Line, a bus line that runs down here on Shelby Street, and the park, and we live here too.
This new building that you hope to dedicate the 1st of May, eclipses all of that size-wise. It's 40,000 square feet. It's very exciting. Originally a dairy barn, been added on to by different users over time. It affords you the ability to do all kinds of other programmed uses that you've never really been able to do before. Am I right? Plus the land around it is afforded a park and outdoor amphitheater and
our chickens. I call them our living sculpture. The
right.
Chicken Palace is a living sculpture with chickens. And then we have the Bee Sanctuary, which is a sculpture by Juan William Chavez.
And then the tree of
cool.
40 Fruit by Sam Van Aken is out there too.
I'm impressed. I didn't even know those existed until you introduced it to me.
They're really a neat thing.
I hope it thrives. I mean, I'm anxious.
We will make sure it does.
Yeah, we're keeping a close eye on it.
Well, tell us a little bit about how this 40,000 square foot, which I think I referred to it earlier as the mothership, will kind of take over as a central component of this campus.
And to clarify, this is an existing structure that goes back, 100 years?
Parts of it do, yeah. So it was built in 5 or so different phases. The earliest phase was connected to Weber Milk and the dairy that Lee was mentioning. Then that part got added to and added to all the way until the 1970s. So you have every kind of building material that's like structural stuff, block, brick, had a metal roof, wood, everything and in between. And in the end, how they did that, they had to connect those buildings with concrete ramps basically and leveling things because people are driving a forklift or moving a cart. And so everything's pretty easy to get around on the main level because of that. So one of the things that is really cool about adapting a factory building is that it was built for general use and adapted and expanded in flexible ways that lended themselves very well to now a large exhibition space that Shaute's planning to program.
Which is also performance space.
There's a separate space for the performance and events. So the new large gallery, which is called the Jeremy Ephraimson Gallery, is around 5,000 square feet, and that will be dedicated to large-scale sculpture and or installation. So we won't have events in that particular space, but there's another space that is around 5,000 square foot as well.
Frank and Katrina Basile Hall. So that's Basile Hall back there. So
big space.
The big space.
2 stories.
It will, and we're calling it a hall because it can be various things. So it could be performances, it could be a conference space, it could be a banquet, a celebration. It's a space that we'll keep flexible and be able to do a lot of different stuff in.
Well, the whole campus, I understand, is about 5 acres.
Right.
And that's pretty impressive. But it needs to be underscored that the spaces we're talking about in the CAMi building are not just about showing art. It's about supporting artists.
Right.
And you've got other parts to this puzzle that do that. You've got, besides the galleries, which will help artists showcase their work, you've got studios 18 studios
Mhm.
where artists presumably can rent space and practice their craft, right? On site.
Yes.
Yeah, those are currently, we have at this point, which is in the end of 2025, we have applications open for people to try to be in there if they would like.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. So let's say I'm an enthusiastic younger artist. I'm saying, great, I want to,
Mhm.
how much is this going to cost? And what do I have to do? And, do you need to see my work to be evaluated so that I'm good enough to participate? What is that
Yeah.
dynamic?
They're in the ballpark of $500 a month or less. They're all reasonably sized. They're not big. You can't give away a big studio and have it be affordable. So they're nice size, but they're not huge. The approach that we're taking is just seeing what their practice is, what their medium is, how they feel about working with others and that kind of stuff. And so we have a series of questions that Shauta and I worked on that we put out there. They fill that out. We're trying to make it a community of artists that has a good combination of different types of artists and people who are doing different work so that maybe they can mesh together or team up, collaborate if they'd like.
And also, like when someone visits, we'll probably have the studios required to be open a certain number of openings a year. So we want the audience who's coming into this space to experience lots of different kinds of genres and mediums.
Mhm.
And so that's why we're not going to do it first come, first serve. It will be a curated
Mhm.
selection of
Yeah.
artists in the studios.
We also have 5 storefronts that are a little different than the studios, and those are we're reaching out to some people and seeing who also just applies to see who might have a small creative business there in the storefronts.
And they'll have their own access from the outside.
Yeah, there's a door to the park and for them, and people can pop right in and see their store.
So when you say creative entrepreneurs, that means, for instance,
it could be a record store that shares weird music like we play on WQRT,
Okay.
It could be something that's in the various art forms that we have in there, visual art.
And then sometimes there's artists who have had a lot of success doing markets or fairs, and they might want to try out having a storefront and an anchor space. So, it's a good entry level size to take on if you're looking to move into a concrete storefront.
They're just a few hundred square feet.
Cool. You've described CAMi as accessible in all ways, which is laudable. I think I know what that means, but you stress intellectually, physically, and spiritually.
Well, part of that has to do with you don't have to like everything you see there. I think that when you make something accessible, you also have to be open to, someone, not particularly enjoying a space or having quote unquote negative feedback about it. I believe that contemporary art, at times because it's art that's being made about the moment, it can be challenging for people to process and uncomfortable at times, especially with the polarization that we're experiencing right now in the United States. So art can be a great tool for conversation, and just knowing that if you come in there and you don't like it, that's okay. And that's part of what I mean about accessibility is that if
you don't mean ADA.
That's part of it too.
That's part of it too. But I'm also, sometimes people find contemporary art, they have this in their mind that it's for the elite only, or that they needed education to appreciate art. You don't have to appreciate art. It's for everybody, regardless of education, political affiliation, race, gender, all that. We're welcoming the public into this space and accepting however they feel about it. However they feel about it is valid.
By it, you mean the artwork. So we do want the space to be something that everybody likes. We don't want anybody to come in and say, I didn't really like this place. It was terrible. We're trying to design a space that has something for everybody. So
concrete floors, White walls, white ceiling, pretty much.
Yeah, but you're going to have comfortable places to sit. It's going to be free to get in there, so you can come in for free. You can come in every single day and sit someplace in a lot of daylight. There's a ton of nature that you'll be able to see out the windows and inside the space, plants and things like that. And that's how it is at the current tube that we've been in for the last 10 years. You come up to the side entrance, and what do you see out there? You see some chickens. You see ping pong tables. You see chairs to sit at. There's an awning you can sit under when it's sunny out. So that's
sometimes a food truck.
And that's your entree to the space, not something that is off-putting and scary, and so you feel like you're entering a prison or something like that. We don't want that kind of thing. But sometimes you enter a museum and it doesn't feel like you're moving into a nice, cozy, fun place. I mean, it's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about like how we want it to be a restorative space.
It's an interesting word to use. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
There's so much information in the world. From the moment you wake up, people are very anxious, and their surroundings really influence how they feel. Your surroundings can lower your blood pressure. Nature, they say walking around in the woods. So what we're trying to do is accomplish that through art. Jim has largely done a lot of the design.
Yeah, so if you think about like Frank Lloyd Wright's compression and release, and you make that a metaphor for life, how can you get release from the compression of all this stuff, all this information, all this stimulation?
All these screens, all the
and
electrons.
Doing too many things at once. There's a therapeutic approach that people talk about where you look at a piece of art for an hour, just one thing. Just choose a painting, sit there and look at it for an hour.
And that is hard to do for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The average, there have been studies about people in museums, your average time spent standing in front of a painting or a sculpture, it's under 20 seconds.
Yeah, like the Mona Lisa even. So you're going to go see the Mona Lisa and you got to move out of the way in 2 minutes. And that kind of stuff, I think, is a very interesting and a important strategy to think about, and to not just give in, like I used to work at the newspaper, and the newspaper at the time was trying to figure out how to deal with short attention spans. So their strategy at that point was, let's just write little blurbs, short stories. Well, guess what? In print, that doesn't work. So I remember talking to them and just saying, maybe a daily newspaper needs to be more like an old weekly newspaper or a magazine almost, because the long form in the newspaper makes sense because it's a whole day that you have that thing in your hand, not minutes.
Would I be correct in saying, I was just speculating, I should say, that when the CAMi building is up and running, that it will provide for people in the city, people in the neighborhood, that kind of moment of restorative.
Yes.
And so, listen, you're all tensed out from whatever's going on in your world. Come be with us for an hour, half an hour even.
Yeah. And we see that right now inside of the Tube building. We have a guy that comes in here, super nice guy, and brings his drawing pad and some books, and maybe he picks some books up out of our little library we have in there and just draws for hours and just talks to people and visits with some of the artists who are in our residency program, and just is there.
Yeah, I mean, as a lot of our jobs and work has moved to being on the screen and even remote, most people still crave, human company, being around other people. You do have a lot of people working in coffee shops because they want to be around other people. They could stay home, they could make their own coffee, but they want to be out in the world. They want to see who else might walk in, or they might want to take a break and go look at the gallery shows.
Yeah.
Will there be a coffee shop?
Yes.
Yeah. The one is going to stay in Tube, and then there's going to be another little cafe in the other building as well.
I can't help but sort of form this comparison in my own mind that on the north side, the near north side, we've got the Harrison Center, which is an artist collective. It's not really a collective, but lots of people in small spaces getting together. They have regular monthly openings.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the South Side has taken a good look at that and said, that's a fairly successful model in terms of community engagement.
Well, we love the Harrison Center, and we have had a lot of different partnerships and worked with them in the years. And the space is in a very different area of the city, of course, than ours is. And also it's a very different setup up there. So we really feel like we're in a spot that's This isn't a hierarchy, but it's somewhere in between these collecting museum institutions and a place like the Harrison Center that is really emphasizing artists in the building and artists they bring in selling work in their spaces. And when you are selling work, you want a lot of volume. You want people moving through, and you're really pushing for that. And we're really thinking about that in a different way where we're not selling work. We haven't done that down here. We haven't sold work on a regular basis since our old days in the Murphy building. And when we were doing that, we didn't really enjoy it very much. It can be a little bit for the artist and the space stressful, and you don't know how much to price things for. We just wanted to not have to worry about the commercial side of it. And so we got out of that part of it. We really see that this is a space where you can also walk in, not have to buy a ticket, not have to worry about the art being for sale and considering that piece of it. And Shaute's commissioning these shows. And so the artists are still getting paid. And we also do a lot of work with public art and things around the community where our artists who are in our residency program get involved in that, participate in painting murals or Spark on the Circle. So I think we can still do that stuff with the studio artists and help connect them to resources. Another aspect of trying to sell work in this city is much of that is tied to relationships. So an artist who has maintained and built strong relationships in this city is more likely able to sell their work in the city.
When you say relationships, you mean with potential buyers, with friends, and people who
all
live across
of the above.
street?
So if you have an art show and I come to it, I might buy it because I really like you and I like your art.
Thank you.
But if I didn't know you at all and there was an art show and I liked the work, I might be like, I think that artwork is good, but I don't know that person. I don't really feel any kind of motivation to buy their work. So this is another reason that we are staying out of that sales area so that we can also show artists from around the country, around the world, and we don't have to stress, oh, we're bringing this person all the way from Puerto Rico or Scotland or something. Their work isn't selling and they're going to have to buy their own plane ticket back, that you can't do that. And it isn't, again, us saying this is better or we're better for not being in that zone. It's just
complementary to have a variety of different organizations serving the cultural ecosystem of the city. And there's nuances in terms of the goals and vision of all the arts nonprofits, and they're all important, and I value everything we have in the city.
When you talk about a city, you said we've got something up on the north side, we've got something on the south side, maybe we'll have something on the east side or the west side, wherever side. It's implicit in that statement that there is an overarching and overall sense of urban design in terms of cultural design, having certain, and cities have understood that for a long time. Broad Ripple has been a funsy place to be for 50 years, if not longer. And it takes a conscious crafting of a set of structures and populations and business or philosophical models, as you say. When you first started saying, we've got this great opportunity to do something down here in this old factory, and you were talking to people around the city, people who might give you money, whether it's the Lilly Endowment, obviously. Yeah. Are the conversations that you have with these supporters, are they keenly aware of and interested in maintaining a kind of a cultural function heterogeneity, if I may? How do you approach this whole notion of cultural urban design?
Art can be a good investment. So when we talk to funders, not only are we thinking about the audience and saying, well, they'll have access to seeing an artist like Saya Wolfach, who we showed, and now she's in Times Square, or Yvette Mayorga, who's also another artist we've shown who has work in Times Square and at various very well-known institutions all over the country. So not only are people having access to seeing those artists, they can also be, if they were like, oh, I want to buy this Yvette Mayorga piece, I would then connect them to Yvette. And then the other thing is it's providing access to see what is going on in the high art world. When we have these shows, when we're exhibiting these artists and we're having a foot in both community and the high art world, it will also elevate the local artists that we're able to invest in here as well. So they get access to see what's happening, and they're getting to show at an institution that has also exhibited these artists who are very well known. So when we talk to funders about that, that's how we talk about how we fit into this ecosystem. So,
Well,
yeah.
and I forgot, excuse me, but the thing on
Indianapolis.
Massachusetts
Oh,
industry.
factory art.
Yeah.
Factory art,
Right.
excuse me, thank
Yeah.
you, which is, a fairly thriving scene some
Yeah.
days.
For sure.
Yeah, so those places are doing well supporting local artists. Maybe I think Talene's gallery probably is our best.
Talene Eddington, which is
Yeah.
over by the old Bush Stadium.
Yeah, it's probably
Commercial
our best.
gallery.
It's our best commercial gallery. Like a commercial gallery can't afford to take on a ton of artists. People don't always understand how galleries work. They have an overhead, they have insurance, they have rent, so that percentage of the sale that is going to gallery is important. So what we're addressing right now is this in-between area. How do we continue to be competitive in this region culturally? There's great
When you say region, you mean like the Midwest?
I'm saying the Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we have to think about ourselves also, and I'm not going to say necessarily against, but, Cincinnati or Louisville or
St. Louis.
St. Louis, what do these,
Columbus.
what do they,
Milwaukee.
yeah.
Milwaukee.
What's going on in these other places?
Cleveland.
That's a great point. And let me ask you, I mean, comparing us, Indianapolis, to, let's say, Cincinnati, are we richer and more robust in our cultural opportunities and resources?
We did a nice tour of Cincinnati art spaces, artist-run spaces and other ones. And, there are contemporary art museums downtown and is a purpose-built architect kind of building.
Zaha Hadid.
Yeah. And that's
CAC.
a great place. And then there's other things. They're kind of spread out as well. I think that city is a lot like ours in that you can drive around and there's the interstates that can drop you off in 10 minutes from here to here. And I think that's part of why we are not concentrating all the arts in one zone. And I think the other thing is that when you start to do that, like we saw with Mass Avenue, then all of a sudden it's not that anymore.
It takes about a decade, but then it becomes boutiques.
Right. It's too nice for the arts anymore, So I think where we've landed is that it is pretty spread out. But what Shauta is saying is that kind of plan and the way the funders look at it is for these things to be different from each other and to fit in the system.
To a community, too.
Yeah.
It's not just a gallery for art. They want you to be integral to a community.
Right.
Because that's a justification for them to support you. You're doing more than running a commercial gallery or a not-for-profit gallery. You're lifting the neighborhood at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that you can consider a community beyond that too. So if you're offering in this space, say the Indianapolis Art Center is drawing people from all over the city to go take art classes. So that community is the community of people who want to learn more about art in a hands-on way. And they might come all the way from down here to go up there to do that. And that's still that group. And then within that place, they connect with each other and they're in a class learning how to do glass blowing or something. Then they build a relationship with their classmates. They don't have to be from Broad Ripple to do that. And I think that's the same thing with us. We're trying to create a place that you could drive down here or take the bus or however you get here. And this is a place where you're going to feel good. And maybe you're coming from Broad Ripple because what you're looking for is this quieter atmosphere, or this time where you can contemplate, or this time where you can see a contemporary artist from Scotland or from San Juan. That's what this place has to offer. So it's both the people who can walk across the street or from the neighborhood and come in and further afield.
You're both on the red line. You and the
right.
the Indianapolis Art Center.
Well, and also I just want to add, we're not there's the Garfield Park Art Center here as well. And they do they have classes. So sometimes in the past, people have come to me and they'll be like, I want to give a painting class here. And I'm like, well, we're not interested in that. Why don't you talk to the Garfield Park Art Center? I know they're looking
And that's part of Indy Parks, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of Indy Parks. We also want to continue to complement this community. And if the Garfield Park Art Center's doing that, then we don't need to do that. It's right under a half a mile away from where we are through the park. And we're also, when it comes to even thinking about ourselves in terms of a restorative space, we're piggybacking onto one of the biggest parks in the city, Garfield Park. It's a beautiful park. So people can go from CAMi into the park.
Yeah, there's nothing arbitrary about what you're doing. You're making sure that you're the fit for this neighborhood. And, does that lend itself to ultimately this sort of pocket of the South Side becoming its own cultural district? I don't know what that takes.
It's official now. So we're one of, but there's many of them. So there are, I think, 19. We applied with the neighborhood association and other partners. And so that was awarded. So it's official. It used to be that there were 5 or something.
Well, the city's been doing stuff like that for at least past 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
Great places, a certain corner of Illinois and 38th Street, designated cultural districts. There was a big article in the IBJ just a month ago, three weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that's what the city knows how to do, is proclaim, so to speak. You are now a cultural district. Does that come with any tangible opportunities that you would not have had otherwise?
I think what it does come with, and, we've been talking about this and the neighborhood trying to figure out where we go with this designation. I think what it comes with is it's a boost for us to feel like, okay, great, we're being recognized in this way. I think it does give us something to organize around a little bit. It's also a way for us to possibly apply for some funding and think about that kind of stuff too.
So it's an ongoing, even though you do have support from the Lilly Endowment, that it's an ongoing challenge to find new grants, new opportunities, new collaborations. It's a question mark at the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be, after we finish this stage, we need to raise an endowment because this has to live past Jim and I. And having acreage, having these buildings, having the housing, we want to make sure that this continues post us. So that's what we'll jump right into raising an endowment after this.
Give yourself at least a quarter century.
Right.
I don't know if I have that long.
You do.
You have 18 homes. Is that 18 houses?
2 of them are doubles. A few of them are co-owned with artists. So they own part of the house. So when they make their house payment to the Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnerships, the lender on those, they are get equity in those homes that if they sell them someday, they can get the money back. Then another section of the rest of them are affordable rentals, where we're discounting the rental rate in exchange for them to do work in the community. So they don't work for us.
So they don't have to be part of CAMi per se, just more of a community.
Yeah. So some people do work around here on the block, and then some have other things that are part of their practice that they do around the community and sometimes even outside of town.
Yeah.
And then we have 3 units that are also for visiting artists. So when Shauta brings an artist in from out of town, they can stay in there. We have partnerships with a couple other entities, Aurora Photo Center and
Arte Mexicano in Indiana.
Yeah, and IU Indianapolis's Indiana University of Arts and Humanities Institute. And so we have people come from all over the country and all over the world and stay over there on the campus in those places.
Kind of like little Airbnbs for artists, right?
Right.
Yes.
And they come and they pay nothing and stay a month or whatever.
That's great.
Where do you want to go from here? I'm talking purely from a real estate standpoint. Are you done, or are there other houses to buy, or are you?
It depends on who you ask.
Okay.
So we did recently receive 2 different grants. One of them is from the National Endowment for the Arts, and that's an NEAR, a town grant. And one of them is connected to that is from Glick Philanthropies, and that's to study this very question. Do we want to expand? How could we expand? How could we offer more affordable artist housing? Where could that happen? When we're working with some folks to kind of come up with those ideas, not building anything new out of these grants. These are planning grants and program grants to just kind of get there. So I love the idea of accessory dwelling units so you could take an alley like we have over here behind Cruft Street, and maybe that alley becomes its own street. Like, have you guys ever been to the Kensington Market in Toronto? It's a really cool place, and it's was their market area, and then they took all these alley houses and turned them into little houses, and it's just a very densely populated, like you're in England or whatever in the olden days. And so it's like just this density, like we know
density is important
we
to
really do.
vibrancy.
So we were in Tokyo recently, and I looked it up, and there's parts of Tokyo that are 30,000 people per square mile. And here it's like 2,000. So that's why you go around Tokyo. There's a gazillion little places to pop in and get something to eat. There's jazz bars and there's all these things because there's so many people on that mile to support those businesses. And here sometimes density is a bad word.
Well, but it's an all-purpose term that means probably different things to different people. But I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that when you folks use it, it's how many people per square mile, how many businesses per square mile, how many, flow through traffic. Essentially, it becomes a metric of energy and human activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that like, okay, well, what happened to Fountain Square? How can they support so many coffee shops? How many plant stores? How many Mexican restaurants? How many of all these things? Well, alongside that came all these apartment buildings that popped up that are full of people who live there and work there. And so then you have a lot of people around all the time to spend money.
Yeah, and residential is very important because I think most people commute into work around 3 days a week and then work from home in their neighborhoods I think that it's really important that, because there's been this flip, people would used to maybe get drinks with coworkers after work. So downtown and in the surrounding neighborhoods have a different dynamic. So we are going to have to look at, if we want our downtown to continue to thrive, because it's not doing bad, but if we want it to continue to thrive, there has to be more high density housing where people are calling this home and not driving back out to the suburbs.
One thing I want to mention, just in case people wonder, is that we're not the developers personally of any of this. So we don't own, Shauta and I don't own any of these houses. We don't own any of these buildings. These are all owned by the nonprofit. And that's another distinct difference between a place like, say, Factory Arts District, which is privately owned by an individual. And so when there's an investment in our property by philanthropy, by somebody who wants to make a donation, it's not going to somehow go into our pocket, because then we'll, in 15 years, we're going to sell this off to be condos.
Retire to Aruba.
Right. We don't want to, and it won't happen. And that's not how it works. And I think philanthropy and donors are very interested in that idea that there is a long-term investment that is not going to change into something else.
That's an excellent point to make. Do you have other sort of long distant, 5 years from now, or even 10 years from now, what we would really like to see is this? It's not obvious just from what we're doing right now, but 10 years from now, what if?
A good percentage of our work is related to doing Spark and to doing public art projects around the city.
And explain just a little bit more about what Spark is.
Spark has been our placemaking. This is the word that's used often for taking a spot like a section of Monument Circle that may not be very active with things happening, people hanging out there. It's just maybe a lot of cars going by or whatever, and not much else. And so taking that, like we've done over the last few years, and turn that into a public park that is programmed.
And that's one quarter of Monument Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And people they've probably driven past and say, what the heck's going on? There's some, lawn furniture out there.
Yeah. And, 70-some thousand people will come and hang out over there the course of a year. So we're at this point where in the future, is all of this stuff from one organization, and this is where we're talking about succession planning and what's the institution going to be like in the future. Maybe everybody who's in the future may not look at all that, doing all that at once, but this space down here continues to be developed and improved, and we are making good use of everything that we have down here.
I mean, I'd really love to be able to focus on CAMi and supporting artists and commissioning. I would love to have a huge budget for amazing exhibits. We will have 8 galleries, and I want to be able to put on the best shows in the region.
Yeah. So 5 years gives us time to think about what does the picture look like at that point and who's doing what.
Does the neighborhood, you've mentioned that your partners, you have a good collaboration with the neighborhood association. Do they want to see more mixed use development? Do they want to see more high density residential? What do they feel this is going to turn into or evolve into?
They definitely, the South Side did a quality of life plan that we helped with several years ago at this point, and it included neighborhood feedback that affordable housing was really important. And so that's part of where we went with our approach to affordable artist housing, because we want to work with who we're used to working with, and that's artists, not just regular affordable housing. So we think that that's still the case and that people would like that. They want to make it so that the neighborhood doesn't start to exclude artists from being able to be here. So and they've been very, the artists in the neighborhood get a lot of support from the neighbors who aren't artists. And many of them are artists themselves. So, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, there were already a lot of artists living in Bean Creek and Garfield Park before we started the housing program.
I noticed there are several buildings either for sale or under development up Shelby a little ways. Do you know what's coming?
When we lived in the Wheeler, just south of Virginia and Shelby, what was in front of us was Bud Supermarket, which is the Goodwill now. And then to the left was the police substation with a big parking lot in front of it. And then a couple of dive bars on Shelby, and then a bunch of vacant lots. And if I think back to that 25 years ago and look at that and think, boy, everybody thought, and I remember this thought being in my head, nobody would really want to go to this bar south of Virginia.
Yeah.
Like that's the terminus of the
Right.
energy. Boy, everything south of there, you've got a cat cafe, you've got you've got everything down there. And people are so comfortable with that area. So I feel like we're in that just south of the heart of Fountain Square kind of period of time down here, where it's kind of balanced. And like Craig Von Dalen built the Forte one in front of the police substation down there, the Southside Station. And that area is just super nice. So maybe somebody will come along and build something like that down here on some of these lots. But I think they're waiting for some things to kind of tip a little bit before they do that.
What did we forget to ask you?
Well, Lee spent some time working on pronunciation of that.
Yeah, there's that word.
Gesamtkunstwerk, which is part of the conceptual idea behind CAMi, right?
Yeah.
You had several different things, but that translates to total work of art, explaining that this place is not just a home for art. It is a place for art to happen, to be and be made. That was adopted by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
He's the one that made that famous. It's a German term.
Wagner made it famous.
Okay.
He stole it from Wagner.
Okay. Point well taken. All right.
What I like to do is go in a museum or in any kind of building and look for the weird parts of the building that you don't normally notice. So these back hallways, the strange place that's behind here, like where they're stashing some chairs or whatever. And I feel like it all counts and it's all the building. And what Frank Lloyd Wright did, when you go into one of his houses or buildings, there was no area like that was just sort of visible but stupid and like not worth anything and ugly, because you're supposed to look over here. Every inch of that place and the furniture and where to put it. We went to one of the houses and got a tour, and they told this story that he had a key to come to. These are very wealthy people. Frank Lloyd Wright had a key. He could come in there anytime he wanted and stay in the house.
Excuse me, am I interrupting?
Yeah.
What's for breakfast?
So he would come there sometimes when they weren't there, stay in his special. He had like a room that he could use, and then they would come back, and he had moved all the furniture to where it was supposed to be in their house. So I think that idea is about just a holistic approach to a space, and everything is in the right spot. And then when you do that, you're not looking over here and seeing this room and being like, well, let's turn that into a closet. What if it's really neat and it tells the story of the two buildings that got joined together, and there's a exterior window in there, or there's an old chimney in there, bring that out, let people see it, and make this little corner that leads us to the bathroom actually a point of interest, and don't cover that up and forget about it.
So it's possible, I'm speculating, I'm putting words in your mouth. Please correct me. It's that as this total work of art that we call CAMi and the surrounding neighborhood, as it evolves over the next decade, that there are going to be opportunities for, and not simply for you folks, or not simply for the artists, but other people in the community who you may engage and say, let's design a new, I don't know, traffic circle here, or let's think about planting a whole row of trees, or let's talk about creating a bike path through Garfield Park that leads right to us. Is that correct?
One thing I like to think about a lot is how all this, it was just woods, like a couple hundred years ago. And everything that exists in my immediate vision currently came out of someone's head. And I believe all humans are artists. Now, that's not always popular in my circles, but I do believe humans are artists. Like, it's a total work of art. You look at how everything used to be, turn the natural world into something else. And then the scale, like Jim's thinking with
Rundell Ernstberger?
Sorry. But
they're a landscape architecture firm here in town.
Yes, they're so thinking about,
they designed our park.
Yeah, they designed our park
with Daniel Liggett.
Yes.
And so, you can look at this project from many different scales. You could look at it just at the object that might be on display in the gallery. You could zoom out further, look at the gallery, zoom out further, look at the building, zoom out further. So it's just, to me, like when we say that, it's a total work of art. It goes back into thinking about the cultural ecosystem of our city.
Well, one thing that you've been able to do with your 5 acres is reverse a lot of damage, industrial damage from over the years. So, your being here is already reversing a negative trend.
Well, and some of it wasn't bad by the company. It was just like, well, why wouldn't we pave all the way up to the creek and make parking spaces? Or we depaved that area near the creek.
Depaved.
Yeah, it's all gone up towards the creek and put native plants down there, and it's a place where people hang out. And they would have never been doing that before, because who knows what would have just been parked there, and that was what was happening. And in terms of the industrial past of this block, I think it's amazing, and I love mixed use blocks like that, where we know one of the folks who was there who passed away worked right there in the factory, lived right in front of it. And there were many people who did that. So you lived right by where you worked. You didn't have to have some commute every day, which is how it is for me. I walk right over here to work. I feel super lucky to get to do that.
Well, one thing that you mentioned was the hexagon. Cultural Trail is largely made with hexagon-shaped pavers, and you've adopted the hexagon to a certain extent for some of your pavers.
Well, there's a lot of tie-ins. There's a tie-in to it in terms of its industrial use, the hexagon shape of a bolt. And then you also have like snowflakes and things on a very small microscopic level are in the shape of the hexagon. So you think of it as sort of a building block of life in a way.
We had the bee sanctuary that Shauta mentioned. So in that bee sanctuary, Juan William Chavez, the artist from St. Louis, worked actually with a lot of teens from the TeenWorks program, and our son Max when he was a teen, and they built the bee sanctuary, and its pavers are hexagon shaped.
And beehives are
because he's linking it to the beehives.
Right.
Yeah, so that was how he was carrying that out for people to see. And so there's a lot of great links, and it's really
where
cool
nature and industry meet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I always like to say, and I heard this from Darren Anderson, who's an author. Contemporary art's old. It's building upon thousands of years of stories and other art, and it's building upon it. And we are too, in the case of this building, we're adding to it. We're not removing it and building something new.
Our organization is an adaptive reuse organization, so Art is adaptive reuse, all these buildings, ideas. You don't need to always throw everything away and start fresh. And it's more fun in a lot of ways to adapt and work with found materials and existing situations and see what happens.
Rundell Ernstberger, helped you quite a bit with the planning and the landscaping. Obviously, Young Klaus Campbell is your contractor for years now,
They're excellent.
as you've gone through all kinds of revisions. Black Line Architects helped you get started with your building.
And we have a great board that's part of Big Car and a campaign cabinet that helped us. And one of the people that's been very active with all this is Katie Jacobson, who's the CEO of Tube Processing. So the company that was there, they donated that building to us, and then their family continued, the Seibert family, and Katie is the daughter of George Seibert, who was the guy who kind of made that company what it is. They're still involved. And so there's this history and this connection.
And they're also tied to the Art Center. So they supported the construction of the...
Yeah, George and Diane Seibert
Right.
have been involved.
And haven't they supported other arts institutions?
Yeah, they're
the art
they
centers.
endowed the chair for Corey Robinson's furniture department at Heron.
And the Heron School of Art.
Yes.
Yeah. I suppose at some point education could become a part of what you're doing too.
I think that the way that we've always looked at education in the space is for all ages and really, just lifelong learning that can be for young people and for adults both. And I think a lot of what we were talking about with that restorative space is very important for that aspect. So when you come into that situation and you need to be able to focus and think about art and taking the time to look and notice things, I think that's a cornerstone to everybody's possible success as a human being.
Well, I wanted to thank you both for sitting down with us and telling us the whole CAMi story. It's fascinating. I know you're shooting for May 1st celebratory opening and looking forward to it.
Yeah, we want you guys to be there for sure.
Thank you for doing everything that you're doing. I think it's made a huge impact, obviously, on this half of the city and for the whole city, just to see that this model can thrive. Oh, you're leading the way. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have suggestions or comments about this episode, contact us at talkdesignminded@gmail.com.